Hello and welcome to the Heron Outlet. I am Alex Whitley. That is Ian Hess. That is Austin Robillard. We're switching it up a bit. For the as far as the hosting goes, I am here. Yeah, guys, it was a rough weekend. I would say everything is bigger in Texas, including the losses. Inter Miami got absolutely smacked 5-1 by a decent Austin FC side. The showing was not ideal. After that draw against Chicago, Neville and the boys were hoping to build on that, but unfortunately they couldn't. Ian, I'll start with you. What do you think went wrong, and how do you feel about that result?
I think it's easy to wonder what went right. That was one of the worst performances. I mean, I sent a text to you guys when it was happening, but I thought that only the New England home game last year was a worse game that Inter Miami has ever played. Um, I don't know. It looked lost. It looked frustrated. It looked bizarre at times. I didn't understand the aimless clearances. It seemed to be like they were getting pressured, but then just giving the ball right back when they could have played within each other and actually worked the wings like we've seen them do in that 3-5-2, which I know we'll get to later. I, I don't know. We had talked last week about Ariel Lassiter being an X factor. At times, showed it, didn't show it a lot. There were just bizarre mistakes, a lack of possession. I struggled. This is one of those ones that I think you just crumble it up and throw it in the bin because I don't really know what you get out of this game. It was so weird. You would never have in a million years thought that it would be, I mean, a loss is a loss. It's always on the table. A win is a win. That's always on the table too. But to lose in the fashion that they did was so weird that I don't know if they addressed it. I'm sure that they did, or if they just moved on, which they probably need to do because they have a better opponent in the forefront.
Yeah, and Austin, I want to switch it over to you. Last week we had a bit of a debate about the back line and Jairo Quinteros and going off of what Ian was saying, not only the entire formation just probably didn't work. The back line really had a rough game. Shea started, Noah Allen started. The back line, McVay was there, Quinteros, but they just they really couldn't get it together. What do you think was the main cause of that?
I think. Well, the first thing is I think Phil Neville decided to prioritize experience over natural position,
Mm.
and that is the Breck Shea starting at the left center back role. And I thought that was definitely the biggest issue for me. Um, I know, and maybe I'm being harsh, but he said in the post game presser that Breck he thought had a decent game, or I don't remember the exact quote, but I found it a little bit shocking because I can't say for myself or anybody else who was in the press box at the time in the Austin match that I was with could say the same. Not one person in there would think that, and anybody watching at home probably didn't think that either. And to play a non-natural center back next to a 17-year-old kid who's playing in his second ever MLS game. Granted, I'm probably not giving Noah Allen enough credit. Obviously, I think he's playing above his age and things like that. But at the same time, you're going against a team who's buzzing at home and just scored 5 goals. You don't think Diego Fagundes is going to try and exploit that? One of
Mm.
MLS's veterans who's scoring and having a great season. I thought that it was a very interesting decision. I thought that he probably should have gone for a like substitution with Mabika in the middle of a back three and leaving Quinteros on the right side, and then you having McVay on the left. I think that would have been important, especially with partnerships. I think partnerships in football are extremely, extremely important. Um, and there's something to be said about switching the sides of Quinteros and McVay. Quinteros was trying to build a relationship with DeAndre Yedlin. That was spoken about in the press conference in the previous week, and then you have McVay, who had talked to us in a media scrum about building a partnership with Noah Allen and saying that the kid, is wise and he understands the game. And then you just completely go ahead and switch that and put Quinteros in the middle, McVay to the right, and bring in Breck Shea, a non-natural center back, on the left side of the third center back formation. that's kind of the start of it for me. Now there was a lot more wrong, right? I mean, the midfield not being able to be those connectors that they should be. Granted, we know this team's going to go ahead and give up possession and try to counterattack, but if you're going to give up almost 70% possession in the first 45 minutes and literally only have one shot the entire first half through a counterattack, there's an issue there. And by the way, the shot was a very lousy one from Ariel Lassiter that probably shouldn't have even counted as a shot. Like, they were not getting anybody into good areas going forward with 30% of the ball. It was a huge issue, and I guess we'll dive more into it. But there's other things that I can take away too, and we'll talk about in a minute. But the pressing and the I mean, there's so much to discuss. We'll continue it, section by section, but it was overall extremely disappointing, but I think that it does stem from the starting center backs, and how they fared.
Yeah, let's touch on that, Ian. I know Austin talked about just passive tactics and trying to build the back and trying to build those relationships, but then Neville goes and switches up the back line, albeit due to injury. But at the same time, this is a relatively kind of an expansion team at this point. 9 new debuts when they played Chicago and Austin. Against Austin, they didn't look no, they looked like an expansion team. So I want to touch on, maybe the tactics weren't playing to the players' strengths because I know Ian, you talked about a lot of the long balls and how it could work, but against Austin, it just seemed like Austin kicked it up another notch, and Miami, as soon as Austin scored that first goal, they just weren't able to fight back.
Yeah, I mean, you called it passive and reductive. I agree with those statements, but also like the idea of tactics, I'm not really sure on. I really don't. I've watched the game twice now, and I don't know what the plan was. Those weren't long balls; they were just clearances, and they were just giving it right back to them, and it was almost
True.
like cyclical in its fashion. So I would love to, I guess, try and find out what the idea was. Like, where did you think you were going to create chances playing that way? We have seen Inter Miami go through these phases where they had long ball play under Alonso. They had last year a lot more wing play outside in that they tried to do, and we thought that this was going to be a lot more route one this year. We saw that with Chicago; it was very effective, and then they just abandoned it. It like I mean, you can watch 4 minutes in. I think you posted a photo on Twitter, Alex, of 4 minutes in of of these lines that you're looking on the field and you're saying no one's in position here, and it was really remarkable. I there was a Jekyll and Hyde to certain players. I think DeAndre Yedlin had a solid, consistent performance for now 180 minutes. There's a lot promising there. I think you can bank on that. I think that Jean Mota and Gregory had a much better pairing this week than they did in week one. And I think Higuain is finding his way into that creation role and getting more comfortable with it as we progress. Those were really, outside of some of the subs that I know we'll talk about later, that was it for anybody that started the match. And in terms of tactics, the game plan just it seemed like they were a, a team that in England might have been relegated that were playing against Man City or Liverpool when they're playing against Austin, which
You
like
can
no
just say you can
disrespect to
say
Austin.
Everton. That's okay.
Yeah, no, but they were playing like not to lose. They weren't playing to win. And it was just bizarre. I don't know why they made that decision to play that way. Didn't feel like it was necessary. And it felt like they let the game come to them far more than anticipated. And they were never on that front foot.
Yeah, I wanna talk about that some more, especially Ian. You talked about the pressing, Austin. I was wondering if you noticed that. I know in the first couple of minutes, it was, I tweeted about it mid game. Miami, they really wanted Austin to break them down. They were sort of defending in this mid block, and they only really pressed when Austin pushed it out to the wings. But even then, the press wasn't as pressing in soccer, every team does it nowadays. If you don't press, you're seeing, it's you're going to concede goals. So, Austin, talk to me about Miami's press and maybe how it didn't work all the way, and then because that didn't work, the back line was put under a lot of pressure, and because they were put under a lot of pressure, they ended up conceding and maybe not getting as many chances on target offensively as they would have should have.
Yeah, I mean, you were right about your point about when they wanted to press Austin, and it was when they were on the wings in their own half. And granted, that's not a bad press trigger, in my opinion. I think that that's good. However, if you don't execute it properly, you lose 5-1. And that's exactly what happened, right? I think that the time and I tried to ask Campana about this and what the instruction was. I know he didn't play in the first half, but
Yeah.
I didn't really, unfortunately, I didn't get like a true answer. But um, for me, what I saw was 3 or 4 players taking on the press, and then any other players who were behind them or still in the defense weren't making the proper adjustments to cover the other side of the field, in which Austin was so capable, so easily capable of just shifting the ball over with a little tiny lob pass, getting past the press, and then it's broken down completely. Miami failed to get back into shape quickly, and then that's why they had so much of the possession, because after those tiny little press triggers that took maybe 15 seconds, Austin FC's in open green space for another 2 minutes working the ball into the box. And that for me was the biggest issue about the press. And I've seen numbers about Phil Neville's presses and whatever. And like you said, Alex, it doesn't really matter for me. It has to happen. Like presses have to happen, especially if you're going to concede possession on purpose. Like that's exactly what the goal of this team has been to do, is to counterattack. It's so easy to see. And when you concede possession, you've got to win the ball back in good areas at the right times. But when you're going to do that and you're going to execute that, and you let just a sloppy pressure or a non-shifting movement give the other team so much open green space, there's no point in doing it. You're tiring out your defense, you're tiring out your attackers. You have no shape after the ball is played, and then you let them work the ball easily to their strengths. It's like they're in a training session at that point with 3 or 4 players completely out of the play, 35 yards away from where the actual ball is. And I think that that is the biggest issue in terms of the presses.
Well, and Austin, to that point, the 3-5-2 is set up for a high press. It's set up for a counterattack. You don't want that back block of three, sometimes having to be five, to you want to get that forward and out there. You know, when we talk tactics, a lot of the time I like to look at the field in terms of like 9 quadrants, the attacking third, middle third, defensive third, left, center, and right wing. That attacking third, there was no pressure there. That middle third, in the middle of the middle third, there was no pressure there. Where you saw it was the middle third on the wings, but then by the time it got into the defensive third, you were dead to rights. And that's why, I mean, Austin only had an XG of 2, I think. It was 2.0. It wasn't very good. The what they did was every single time they got in, they capitalized on it. They were wise beyond their years. So they didn't need a lot of opportunities in order to beat you. But as soon as they got those opportunities, they beat you. And that was what happened.
Yeah,
And
and
I think, sorry, Alex,
yeah,
sorry.
go on, Austin.
I just think that has to do with them not finding the shape that they needed to without Damian Lowe there. I don't think we've said it yet, but his absence is obviously extremely important. And the setup on the back line, whether it was 4 minutes in when the ball was on the other side of the field and you saw the rotation not there, and then when to getting into the box, I can remember late in the second half when I saw Quinteros and McVay, after McVay lost the ball, just completely look lost with no wing back help at all and 2 central defenders in the box, and that's it. That is why Austin FC scored on 5 of their 6 shots inside the box. That is exactly why. Maybe it has to do with the presses, maybe it has to do with the shape and not being able to keep it. There are so many different factors, but that's why overall this has got to be one of Inter Miami's worst performances in their history.
Yeah, and I talked about that. I tweeted about it. I don't want to throw Noah Allen out into the Wolves. It's unfortunate because he's a good player, but yeah, that game just didn't really suit him. He's a great player, but he did look a little out of his depth, especially with that center back pairing of Shea. Austin just abused that. You know, basically every time they went up the field, Fagundes, Druisi, they got absolutely punished. And Austin, you're absolutely right about Damian Lowe. He will be missed. Neville said, I believe he'd be out for about 10 days, and it's not looking good for Miami's defense. Of course, later we will touch on maybe some reinforcements coming in, but I want to talk about where does Miami kind of go from here after this loss? Will they continue with the same 3-5-2, or will they switch it up? I know in the second half we saw a bit of a 4-4-2, mainly out of necessity. And Campana came on and scored. So, Ian, I want to talk to you about that. What do you? I know you've been a pretty big, believer of playing a 4-4-2, Miami wise. So, talk to me about that formational switch, and is that something that Neville will look to keep, continue to uh, bring on as Miami, continue the season?
It's old school MLS, right? So that flat 4-4-2 is old school MLS. That's just, it works. It has a tendency to work in this league. But I do like the 3-5-2. It just needs to be done with a purpose. And what I'll say is, as you were going through that there, Mota on the right side of Gregory almost is redundant for Yedlin. What if they just flipped it and put Mo on the right so that he can track back a little more, Yedlin can get higher, and Mota, you can just sort of kind of level it out a little bit more. I think that there's intrigue there, especially because Noah, I don't know what the situation is long term. I don't know what the Gibbs situation is long term. We're trying to like figure it out. There's a lot of things. Breck clearly shouldn't. Breck has been a wonderful Inter Miami player. Shouldn't be at center back. Needs to be on the wing. So if he's on the wing and you bring back in, you move Quinteros to the left, you move Low, like we're kind of rearranging the deck chairs here. But I like the idea of flipping Mo and Jean Mota because that at least allows for those sort of staggered levels. That flat five, if you're gonna run a 3-5-2, that flat five needs to be a wall. And what
Mm,
Austin was doing was basically just like firing cannons over the top of the wall. And so it
mm,
was 2 versus 3 in the back, and they were able to get right through, storming the Bastille. That was an easy thing for them to do. So if you switch to that 4-4-2, which is why I like it, if you're going to play that flat organized style, because remember, it's not really going to be a diamond. Malta and Gregory are going to play next to each other. We had thought maybe it would be like a staggered diamond, but they're going to play a flat. If you're going to do that, that at least creates the leveling that we were talking about before to create more organization within the formation.
yeah, Austin, do you want to touch on that? I know you said something about Yedlin and that partnership on that right hand side with potentially Quinteros, but Miami just the formation, the personnel was switched, so they couldn't do that. So, you want to touch on that and Yedlin's inclusion?
Yeah, I would just yeah, Yedlin is a huge factor I think in talking about the formation because not only, do you bring this guy in as the number one allocation player, whatever it is, but we know his reputation, right? He's quick, he can get up and down the wings, but also defensively he's not a terrible defender and you have to use his defensive qualities. At the same time, when you're playing a 3-5-2 and you're looking to counterattack and your midfield is not able to play any transitional offense through the middle, where does the counterattacks go? Onto the wings. And DeAndre Yedlin, time and time again, was getting down towards the area. I must say, his overlapping runs and his timing is really, really good at times. Really good. However, something that I want to see him improve on, and then I also touch on my next point here, is making that ball into the box or making that ball to switch the offense around the area and figure things out. There's, I think, 3 times in the first half because of where I was sitting in the press box, where I noticed it because I was literally right in front of me. He just completely stagnated the entire offense. He just stood there on the ball because he did not make the decision to play a final pass or play a pass that could help make play the final pass. It wasn't there. Higuain was getting frustrated. I saw Mota getting frustrated with him at times. I think that needs to improve, but I still think that Yedlin needs to be a key part in counterattacks. Now, for the other defensive point, that I think, if I'm not mistaken, that picture that you put out, Alex, at the 4th minute mark, McVay had made a run up.
Mm.
And I think that after the run up is when we saw that weird rotational thing that didn't actually work and everybody was completely lost. That's fine. Like that can happen. We saw that last year with LGP and Figo on 3-back formations, whatever. And Yedlin was asked to do the work. But when Yedlin is asked to do the offensive work, Is McVay able to cover in those areas, or is Jean Monta able to cover in those areas? I don't know. And that's why I loved your point, Ian. It just kind of clicked with me to switch Mo Adams onto that side if they keep a 3-man midfield, which I don't think that they should do. I think it's terrible. And I guess we'll get into what we prefer later on. But if Mo Adams is on that side, who's been asked to be more of a defender than Jean Mota is, and you don't see him being as a connector to the offense, it's okay to waste him down in a right wingback role when Yedlin is 40 yards up the pitch trying to make an offensive play. I think that makes a little bit more sense, and that's something that I would want to see, but it's up to Neville, I guess.
Alex, I want to ask you a question on this because
Mm.
with Austin's point, what about a 3-4-3 or like a 3-4-2-1 or like a 3-4-1-2 with Higuain dropping in, Campana, and someone who's really impressed me a lot is Robert Taylor. I mean, to come in this quickly and play the way that he has in a substitute role to start, I think that he's a definite starter in the future. But something like that, you could maintain your integrity with that three at the back that they've done, but allow Yedlin to get into those wings, allow whoever is, whether it's Breck, whether it's Noah Allen, whether it's Kieran Gibbs, to get on that side. You allow Jean Mota and Gregory in the middle. Maybe Mo Adams needs to find where his role's going to be because it's been quiet. It hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been good.
Mm.
It's been sort of like right in the margins. And then you allow Gonzalo to like sort of fall into that creative role. Robert Taylor and Campana are up top, and you sort of like maintained your game plan, maintained your shape, and offered. What do you think about that as an option?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I love Robert Taylor. I've tweeted about him so many times. I think he was underrated by a lot of these, MLS writers, national writers. He was never mentioned on any of the preseason predictions. I will say, as far as that 3-4-3 goes, there's a bit of an issue with that, in my opinion. I know we talked about the high press a couple of minutes ago, and if you're going to play something like that, starting Higuain wouldn't be the best. I know I tweeted out something on my tactics account about how Higuain is what seven in the 17th percentile in terms of pressures per 90. So as far as that goes, he's not going to press from the front. He just won't do it. He's older. He's slower now, so it just won't happen. Campana, obviously he can do that. So if you want to get the most out of your designated player, you play to his strengths. And right now, I think that's why Miami's playing this super passive, a low block, mid block, half pressing style that they did against Austin, mainly because Higuain, his advanced stats, they show he's just not gonna press. So when you play that 3-5-2, it gives him someone. It gives a Campana or Lassiter, theoretically it's supposed to happen. It gives him a partnership up top with another striker, and so he is able to drop deep because right now Miami have no real creative players. I know Robert Taylor can be that guy. Maybe if Mata gets comfortable, he can be that guy. But right now, other than Robert Taylor, really, Higuain's the only real creative passer that they have. I know in the first two games he's had a combined. The first game he had 7 key passes against Austin. Surprisingly, he had 4 key passes. So that's even though they didn't score, they scored once, but he's still a very potent passer. So as far as that 3-4-3 goes, if Higuain's a lone striker up top, and of course he can play Campana on the wing, but he's going to drift over centrally anyway. It's just another issue as far as the pressing goes because Higuain just won't do it. So I think the 4-4-2 could prove to be a solution to that, but I don't know. Like it's just yeah, it's difficult because there's good players on this team now, but it seems like it's just going in one ear and out the other, and you see what they try to do sometimes, but unfortunately, it just against Austin, it just went disastrously, really bad, and yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think they do have an open DP spot. Maybe they'll go out and get a more creative midfielder. I don't know what they have right now. I think Neville will probably stick with the back three just because he likes that shape, and maybe I don't know against LAFC, which we'll preview later. He'll switch it up, but yeah, it's just a tricky situation. If you
And I'm
guys want
just
to touch
looking
on
at it.
that, you can go.
I'm just looking at it, going back to what you're talking about that
Yeah.
pressure, that necessity to pressure. Inter Miami had twice as many touches in their defensive third, 211, as they did in the attacking third, 106.
Yeah.
You're never going to win a game when that happens. You can't be so far back. And so that 4-4-2 will allow you to at least solidify the back, play out of the
Yeah.
back, but then move forward.
Yeah. Austin, you want to touch on that or?
No, I think you guys did a good job, but I think that it genuinely, other than the Higuain issue, what Ian just touched on, it works on. They have to work on the transitional offense. I mean, if Phil Neville does actually decide to stay with his three at the back without Damian Lowe, defensively, yes, they need to figure out how to get the instructions down to where players don't just rotate out of place and they're not caught ball watching or whatever it is. But at the same time, in terms of in transition, the only way you're going to win those games is actually getting touches in the other side of the pitch and not keeping it in your own half when you actually have the ball. Because if you're going to give up 70% possession, you don't want your 30% to be in your own half. You want the 30% to be on the other side of the field. That's why pressures need to be better. That's why transitional offense and passing on the counters needs to be better.
Mm.
And that's something that's going to be a key to look at going forward and probably into the LAFC game.
Speaking of going forward, we're going to transition a bit. I know we won't stay too long on this subject, but after the loss, there were a lot of calls for the coach's head, and of course that's normal. So I want to throw this question out to you: is Neville on the hot seat? What do you think is going to happen after this? Will he continue the season, or if Miami suffer a couple more losses like this, will his job be called into question? Ian, I'll start with you.
Talk to me in August. I don't want to have this conversation right now. I mean, we just finished an entire, almost a half hour talking about how 9 new players started in the first game, how this is basically an expansion team starting again. That was their first road trip. They're playing a quality team this weekend. They found a point when they would have lost that game in the first one. Like, this call for Phil's head, I don't understand it. I don't get it. If it's still bad in August, okay, I'll entertain the conversation. But right now, I don't even think it's worth discussing. I mean, the guy has done, I think, a quality job. I've disagreed with some of the decisions at times, but I think that he has a good mind for the game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think that he understands personalities. Navigated a very volatile locker room last year that really didn't get discussed enough, and now has who he wants in. Did it look bad on Saturday or Sunday? Yeah, it looked really bad. It looked almost as bad as it seemed. Have there been 3 or 4 of these? Yeah. Has this team also kind of, well, not this team, not this iteration of the team, but like last year, did they perform kind of better than the talent that they had on the field? It's an arguable conversation. They probably performed how they should. So if we're still having this conversation in August, then yeah, I'll have it. But for now, I don't think it's worth it.
Austin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'd agree. I will say I don't know how much August is a long way away. And I will say that in the preseason talks, I thought that looking at the first 5 games of this year was going to be extremely telling because you're a little bit all over the place, right? You have the Chicago game at home in the opener against Shaqiri. You have this game at Austin on the road, who last year was not a good opponent, but now they're seeming like, I mean, they've scored 10 goals in 2 games. That speaks for itself. You have home against LAFC, which is going to be a huge one. And then you've got away to Cincinnati, where you've had a ton of luck, and home to Houston Dynamo, who's not been good in recent years and doesn't look good this year. Points have to be won in these first 5 matches. It is notoriously known, that Miami have not had good starts in MLS seasons. It is what it is. And I thought that this could be a time for them to turn it around. And by the looks of this Austin game, if you were to ask me before the Chicago game how I thought it was going to go and everything like that in the first couple of games, I wouldn't have said 1 point from the first 2 matches, probably. I thought they might have won one of these 2 games. And now I guess I need to take it back a little bit and understand where this team is truly at, understand what the effects are of what 9 debuts on the first day do. The amount of roster turnover is huge, and that can't be understated. I understated a little bit. I thought the preseason was good, and it looked like they were getting ready to gel, and I was happy with Neville having a consistent style and a way to do things. But there's nothing like MLS regular game speed. I don't think, and I think that it's going to take some time. But I do think that things have to be figured out sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
But
Mm.
Not that I'm
Austin,
calling for Neville sacking, of course, but
Yeah.
no, but Austin, they haven't played the style that they played in the preseason. I mean, they did for like the second half against Chicago, but they haven't
Yeah.
played that how we saw them in preseason.
right. And yeah, that's true. And I guess if I look at the first halves of some of those games, the possession numbers probably weren't as drastic as they were in these first two games, but I do think that the idea of having, we talked about it a lot, that route one direct style when they get on the ball in this 3-5-2, they're trying to emulate that. They just haven't been able to do it with, organized MLS opposition. And in preseason, it just happens to be a little different, I guess. And so with what they're going against now, they need to fine tune things and figure out if Phil Neville brought in these players, and I mean, he was consistent with the lineup and how he put them out in terms of formation with certain players. If he's going to stay consistent with that and he brought in players to do certain jobs, he's going to have to stick with it, because you can't be an inconsistent team for the second year in a row, switching formations, trying to figure things out. I really think that players were brought in due to their styles and thinking that they could fit a system that Phil Neville wants. And you can't just give up on that yet. I do want to see a fourth at back, but I don't think that realistically we're going to see it. But I mean, at this point, who really knows? We'll find out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and I want to pose a question. Phil Neville said these are his guys, and this is the style of play that they're going with. But in the post match conference, he it gave me like not chills, but it was it echoed the sentiments of last season where he talked about players doing their own individual thing, and he said the same thing in the post match conference against Austin. So I was curious to see, if he's, like I agree with you. I think Neville will stay on. I think they'll get it together, but at the same time, it sounds, it's bizarre that the same problems that they had last year in terms of when things aren't going, all players resort to doing their own thing. He's saying the same thing now, and I do have to push back a little bit. Isn't that the coach's responsibility to go and make his tactical plan a bit clearer to the players, so when it does go belly up, they have a plan B, plan C, and so on. When you guys say that, it is the coach's responsibility to clean that up a bit.
Um, yes and no. I always look at a manager's role in soccer and football as a little bit different than how we think about in terms of like other American sports, right? If you're a head coach of an American football team, if you're a head coach of the Dolphins, you get to call a play every 40 seconds. You get to have a flow of the game. If you're in basketball, you can always call a timeout and bring the team over, reorganize. You can make substitutions. You can do all those things. In soccer, you never get a timeout. You have to do it on the fly. And so, to your point, I would agree with yes when you need to have a plan B and a plan C prior to the match, which I think that we've seen a little, like the ability to switch to the 4-4-2 on the fly. That looked better, right? When Robert Taylor, and it looked a little, that's where they got the goal when Campana came
Mhm.
in with Robert Taylor coming in, right?
But
Like that
defensively, it looked
started,
worse. No,
right, correct,
I
Yeah.
think
correct.
offensively,
Because they were
yes. You could
already
say
out
it
of
looked better,
position.
especially yeah.
Right, but they were already out of position because you had made those decisions prior to the match. So it's a little bit more difficult. You get like that one halftime speech to reset everybody and make sure, and the rest you're kind of doing on the fly. So I don't put I put more stock into game prep, which is why the way that they've started matches is why I would agree with okay, Phil's got to do a better job there. But once they've realized what hasn't worked, I think he's done a good job of getting set. Okay, this is what they're throwing at us. Now here's how we respond. Because the second halves in both games have looked a lot better than the first halves. Just not necessarily on goal differential, just on like on point like on point of emphasis.
Mm.
I agree to a certain extent. However, if Chicago obviously this is now hypotheticals and maybe it's not an argument that should be heard. But if Chicago, and let's say Shabalko scores that one chance he had on a one-on-one on Diop, scores in the first half, is Phil Neville ready to go on and say, here's what you need to do, players? Because I think personally, maybe the Damian Lowe thing would play a factor there, but I think personally he had the option to make it a switch, gain control back in the game in the second half because he wasn't down a goal, so it didn't seem as bad. And if you go to a game where you're down 2-0 and you're sitting back and giving up 70% possession in that half where you concede twice, you can go all out on the attack. And obviously, if they get a goal, they get a goal and it looks good. But I can't say that the team, other than Robert Taylor and maybe Campana, besides the goal, and obviously Higuain too, looked good in that second half. I thought the defense was an absolute shambles. I could not stand to watch the Quinteros McVeigh partnership. I thought that Breck Shea as a left back was pretty non-existent. Yedlin wasn't getting up as much as he was in the first half. So it rings like, is Neville ready to truly do this sit back and counter style against formidable opponents who are able to score goals first? Because if you concede first, especially in that 45 minutes, you don't get a Chicago Fire second half. It doesn't happen. If you don't go into halftime at a tie with a tie game, or you score your counter attack goal yourself, then things have to change, and they have to change drastically. And I don't know if that is sustainable in MLS at this point.
Yeah,
But
I
Alex,
want to put
Alex,
yeah,
I wanted to pose this to you. Forgive me,
yeah.
but I wanted to pose this to you because that you don't want to panic too fast. And now those first 30 minutes were probably the worst 30 minutes I've ever seen Inter Miami play. So, like, at what
Yeah,
point do you pull the plug and say, "Okay, we need to switch this up"? Like, and you
It,
know tactics better than anybody. Like, when do you just make that decision?
I think I agree with Austin's point. When they switched to that 4-4-2, like the spine of the midfield, it just wasn't together, and that's how you saw those gaps in behind, and that's how Austin scored what their third and fourth goal. It's just and fifth goal, excuse me. Gregory and Mata, they were so high up trying to just get another goal, they left those gaps in behind. And so my concern is if they play that style regularly, you know, do they have the tactical discipline? Will Neville give them the tactical instructions to be able to say, hey, one of you central midfielders need to drop, be that screening presence, be that deep line playmaker to call for the ball, and one of you guys pushes up. I'm honestly, I'm not sure, and that's why I think that they're going to stick with the back three because it just I know they conceded 5 goals, but it provides that solidity that I think they're looking for. But at the same time, that solidity it's not there because players are just missing assignments. They're giving up really quickly, and it reminds me of last season a lot of the times. I know maybe they'll get it together, but and I know it's probably early, but I was genuinely concerned, and I'm normally pretty level headed and positive about certain results, but that game I was just shaking my head a lot. I was like, well, this looks bad. It looked bad. It was unwatchable at times, and of course we're writers and we have to cover the team, and we all know that. But it was difficult to watch at times, and yeah, it just begs a question. How does Miami move on from this? How they look during against LAFC, and we'll touch on that later. But it was just a very unfortunate performance, really. So yeah, basically Miami need to move on, and that's what we're going to do. We're gonna preview the LAFC match. We've touched on what they have to do to win, this weekend. Guys, LAFC are a good team. Uh, I think it's fair to say that it'll be a tough match. I wanna know your guys' thoughts on this. I know Carlos Vela actually had to get substituted out. Against LAFC's last game due to an injury. We don't know if he'll be playing, so I just want to get your guys' thoughts on the matchup. What formation do you think Miami will play in, and how do you think the game will go? Ian, I'll start with you.
I'm going to regret saying this, but I think you have to play a 5-4-1. I hate it.
Mm,
I always hate 5-4-1s. But LAFC against Timbers, I mean, the fact that that was a draw, whew, wow. There's talent all over the pitch, and we'll get into it with Acosta and Brian Rodriguez, and so even if Carlos Vela can't play, I mean, they had 67% possession in the entire 90 minutes of that match.
Mm,
They had a center back, Mamadou Fall, who really scares me because he can completely get right through you. So maybe you go with a 4-4-2 to sort of stop that.
mm,
But they're good on set pieces. They're good at possession. They're good at creating opportunities. They don't really ever. When I've watched them, I'm never really worried that they feel like that they're retreating in a similar fashion that we saw against Austin that we talked about. And so this is a tough one. You're at home, so Miami has struggled at home consistently. They've
yeah.
actually been a better road team than a home team for whatever reason is a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a bit
This
bizarre,
is
isn't it?
yeah, especially in MLS. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So I
crazy.
don't come in with a lot of confidence. That being
Mm.
said, that's a low floor, high ceiling. If they come out and play really well and surprise you, all of a sudden you can not only wipe your hands clean of Austin, but you can really start to feel, oh, okay, this team could show you something. And maybe this is a Jekyll and Hyde team. Maybe that is how they're going to play, where anything can happen on any given Saturday or Sunday or Tuesday or Friday or Wednesday, right? Like maybe that is who this team is. So there is opportunity there. But unlike Austin, where you went in thinking, okay, like this is an opportunity for points, and then you get lambasted like that, and you go, oh, this is one where you're like, okay, well, this is going to be a tough one. And if you come out with a result, all of a sudden you can go, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better about it.
Yeah, and especially, Miami will play FC Cincinnati away, so who knows? They get a result against LAFC, and they go over to Cincinnati and win, and suddenly the Austin result looks, like something of the past.
Austin, I'll
Austin, I want
pose,
to.
yeah, Austin, I'll pose
Oh,
this question to you. If you would have
hmm?
told me 4 points from the first three, right, which would be a win this weekend, 4 points from the first three, you never would have guessed which ones were the ones that had happened. But still,
Exactly.
that would have been, you would have gone, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah, and I think that honestly, if you get 4 points from the first three, it sets you up for 10 points in the first five, right? Like that is a huge possibility given Cincinnati and Cincinnati on the road and Dynamo at home. But I personally don't see this team beating LAFC. I don't think that that's a hot take or anything. I was looking through the numbers and I was actually I never took that Portland LAFC game. Um, you know in as I should have because the numbers were absolutely ridiculous, as you just pointed out, Ian. They had 25 shots. I believe 11 of them came inside of the box.
Oh,
And in the
wow.
game before,
Yeah,
yeah, and the game before that, they played
That
Colorado
game was
and they had
insane.
10 shots of 15 inside the box. And
oh
that
man,
means that in their first two matches, they've had 40 shots and over half of them have come from inside the box.
that's
Well, let me do a really quick number for you. Austin FC scored 5 of their 6 shots inside the box against Inter Miami, and that for me is posing a huge problem. No, but in all seriousness, they need to limit. Um, you know, fine. If we're gonna accept this counterattacking sit back style, which I'm sure people are tired of hearing at this point, but if we're gonna accept that, then they need to be more strict, definitive, tactically sound at the back to where balls can't be worked into the box as easily as they were. Not only were they worked easily into the box by Austin FC, but as they were worked in easily, the shots in front of goal were so easy for them to finish time and time and time again. And that's something that you absolutely cannot give up to LAFC, who, if Vela is playing, have a better attack than Austin FC, just on paper. And not obviously in the first two games, but just talent wise, I think that you could say that. However, that might be a little disrespect to Austin, who have scored 10 goals in 2 matches, which is phenomenal. And they might be a force to be reckoned with. We'll see. Look better for Miami if that's the case. But I think that is by far the number one key to the match. If you're going to give up possession, limit chances inside the 18-yard area. Don't let Diop get tested as much as he was in Chicago or as he was in Austin, because what we saw in Chicago from him was obviously a man of the match performance, played great, but what we saw from him in Austin was not up to that level. And I think that we can't really expect man of the match performances from your goalkeeper every single match, because that, like the other thing that I talked about earlier, is not a sustainable style in MLS.
Yeah, and I want to touch on what you said about LFC getting so many shots in the box. Miami, especially with their defensive gaps in behind, it could be a really long day for them if they don't get their defensive lines right. Against Austin, like you said, they had what 6 shots on goal and five goals, and they all went in. So Miami's gonna have to be really careful with that. I know LAFC they have got a really they've got a lot of talented attacking players. Brian Rodriguez, he got the game tying assist, and he'll be tricky. I believe he plays on the right wing, so it'll be Miami's left. I believe it's probably switched, but yeah, whoever's playing on that side, Brian Rodriguez is playing on. It's going to be very difficult for them, especially when Miami's not very good at defending pacey players that know how to pass and whatnot. It's just going to be a pretty yeah. Hopefully they can get themselves together, but I don't. Yeah, it's going to be a tough game, and hopefully they can pull out a result. But yeah, I want to get your guys' predictions and potential starting 11s or just formations. Ian, I'll start with you. What do you think the game's going to end in, and what formation do you think Miami will roll out in?
I think 5-4-1 makes the most sense. Like I said, I
Mm,
actually wouldn't mind continuing with the 3-5-2 simply because it will benefit you on the back end later on when you go back to playing your Cincinnati's, your Houston's, etc. So
mm,
if they go with that, I don't have a problem with that. And if they decide full on, okay, we're just abandoning ship, we're going to the 4-4-2, then that's fine with me too. I think that a 5-4-1 makes the most sense in this situation, or maybe even like a 5-3-1-1 with Gonzalo being that second striker, and then having one up top. I'd like to see a little more of Robert Taylor get match action. I'd like to see a little more of Rivaldo getting more match action.
yeah.
He had a solid 15 minutes, albeit a little bit unremarkable. But I do really like him as a player, rate him high. So
Mm,
I would like to see him involved in the match. Ideally, if they can get a goal, win, lose, or draw, if they get a goal, I'm not gonna chalk much up as long as it's not like another 5-1, right? So
mm,
if it's a 1-1 and you get a point, or a 1-0, I'm ecstatic. If it's a 1-1 and you get a draw, okay, I'm cool. If it's like 3-1, which is probably what my score prediction would be, I'd say probably like 3-1 is most likely.
cool, cool. Austin, what about you? What do you think the score will be, and what formation do you think they're gonna roll out in?
Oh man. So I was really wrong last week, but I think that Neville tries to stay with the 3-5-2. However, do you want my prediction or do you want what I want to happen? Because I think Robert Taylor should play the first 45 minutes in this game.
Both, do
Personally,
both, do
I know
both.
that he's
Yeah,
okay. So I know that he's not fully fit, and that's just been a thing. And it's a very huge change to come play in America, especially South Florida, as compared to Norway, Sweden, Scandinavia. Anyway,
yeah.
it's a huge, huge change, right?
Mm,
But stop saving him for the last 30, 45 minutes. Put an emphasis on the game with him if you can. In
mm,
my opinion, I think that that's something that's important. Ian, you kind of helped me think that through. I think that that would be cool. However, in terms of what I would want to see, I kind of want to see a 3-4-1-2. I think that you throw Campana up there behind Higuain
mm,
and let Robert Taylor roam around the left or right side wherever he wants to go.
mm,
And then in the middle, Jean Mota and Gregory, and then have Jean Mota kind of reduce his role a little bit in terms of going forward. Something that I noticed, I don't think I've said it yet, but it seemed like Mota had more of the instruction between the three midfielders to be the connector, right? To
mm,
play the forward passes and not be as pragmatic as the other two. Reduce that role just a little bit. I think if you're going to play a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-4-3, let John Mota and Gregory keep up their pressures and protect the back line, especially with Damian Lowe possibly being out again.
yeah.
And maybe you do that, or maybe you trust Mo Adams to do that over John Mota. I'm not sure. Personally, I think it should be Mota just because he has a little bit more quality.
Mm,
And I think that that's something that I would really like to see. I'd like to see an extra attacker in there. And granted, I think you can still give up possession in this way without, getting too destroyed. However, but it's an interesting situation that Phil Neville's in right now, because you're going against one of the league's best in terms of shots in a match, or shots per match, I should say. Carlos Vela's got the quality. Diego Rossi, or sorry, not Brian Rodriguez has got the quality. I'm like 2 years behind. Um, there's an interesting way to do this, but I think he stays 3-5-2. I think he puts Campana instead of Lassiter, which I don't think we've touched on yet, which is a big thing in my opinion, but we have touched on it. Lassiter was not wasn't getting the ball. So I'm not going to say it was his fault, but he wasn't
Yeah.
getting the ball, and that's a huge problem. But Campana stays. Higuain goes up there with him, and I think you'll see Mo Adams again with Gregory Mota Yedlin. I'm hoping it's Breck Shea out at left wing back, because due to the rules, I don't know if Noah Allen is able to go again. I don't think he is.
Yeah.
And then at the back, hopefully Quinteros, Mabika, McVeigh, Yedlin out to the right, and Diop in between the posts.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Good shout. All right, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. Talk about Concacaf Champions League. Ian, I know you've probably watched that. I know NYCFC played last night, and I do believe they got the win. Talk to me about that, and one day maybe Inter Miami will get in that tournament. But how's the MLS teams looking so far?
Better than ever, actually. I wore my NYCFC beat Comunicaciones from Guatemala, so I wore my Shelahu
Mm.
MC jersey. Um, and also, one thing that really interests me about last night was how the Sounders played against Leon, because that was a better team than them, and they absolutely stomped them. But when you look at the stat sheet, they won 3-0. They had 30% possession for the entire match, but
Oh
they
wow.
had 9 shots on target. They could have easily put up 7. I'm not even joking.
Mm.
They easily could have put up 7 with only 30% possession. And so the fact that like a team like that is playing that way, I think is really interesting for Inter Miami fans to think about. Okay, well maybe we don't need to play this possession style, but we could still boss teams. Austin, like
Mm.
I like that as a model. If you go back and watch that game for what this team could do.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what the exact difference is, because you pointed out earlier, and now I have a connection to make it to. So you say that, or you saw that Seattle had 31% possession, right? Miami in the Austin FC game, if I'm not mistaken, had like 40 something, or I think it was 41. So a 10% difference. However, it still shows that both teams are giving up possession. When I look at accurate passes made, Miami in their own half made 169 passes, and in their opposition half made 114. Okay? And you look at the Seattle game, in which they had 30% possession, in their own half, only 87 passes, compared to accurate passes, I should say, compared to in the opposition half, 120 accurate passes, which shows you how big of a difference it is for you if you're going to give up possession, where your passes should be made and where you should be playing the game. It's not in your own half if you're giving up possession. It needs to be in the other half, and that's exactly what Seattle did, and that's probably why they were so successful.
And then the
True.
other thing
True.
is, Revs are going up against Pumas tonight, as well as that should be like a really talented game. Two very talented
Yeah.
teams. And I like Montreal would be also plays tonight against. Trying to remember, it's another team from Mexico. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but uh, that game intrigues me because Montreal is, I think, kind of a similar case study to Miami. So I want to see how they perform against a team
Cruz
that
Azul.
probably is better than them.
Yeah.
Oh, Cruz Azul, yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
So yeah, a team that is better than them. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So I want to see how they react, how they play, and that might actually. I mean, you can draw a direct line between Cruz Azul versus Montreal and LAFC versus Inter Miami, right? Like
Mm.
you can see where the style of play is going to be extremely similar on both ends. So how Montreal plays this game tonight, as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, that will be interesting for me to see what happens this weekend.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're at the end of the show, and on a lighter note, after all this, doom and gloom Inter Miami talk, the stadium vote, on Thursday, Inter Miami, their bosses, they'll be down here in South Florida, trying to get the stadium vote done. I know it's been a long process. Yeah, it's sort of the big one. I believe I read in Miami Herald article a couple of months ago that Jorge Mas was looking to maybe get shovels in the ground by the end of 2022. I don't know about that, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on the vote and do you think it will pass? Are there going to be any hiccups? If there is a hiccup, what potential other stadium site do you want them to move on to?
I'll start really quick, Ian,
Yeah,
because you're more well versed in this than I am. Um, I'm not big in Miami politics at the moment.
yeah,
So for me, as a Broward baby, I'm kind of just letting it ride out. I know what's best for the club, however, right? I know that this would probably be huge for them, or not probably, it will be huge for them. And it's something they've been working towards, and it's kind of just going to cement them as a stable franchise. Not that they aren't already, but it really helps out. And it obviously they're trying to do more than just build a stadium, which is also could be huge too. Uh, so obviously, best of luck and great and everything like that. But I live 10 minutes away from Drive Pink, so I'm just gonna lie back a little bit and let you guys go with this.
So I'll basically put it as like the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm skeptical, but I've lived here long enough to know and I've covered Miami politics long enough to know that when things get quiet, it's normally a good sign for deals getting done, whether or not you agree with the deal or not. And things have
mm,
gotten quiet in recent months, so or quieter at least. It hasn't been, I guess, litigated out publicly as much. You haven't seen your Norman Brayman's, your Billy Corbyn's talking about it as much lately as they normally are the ones who pop their head up with things like this. When if you are on the side of pro stadium, the negative, the bad, the Miami Herald came out with an editorial that was really scathing, and you should go read it. It's a good
yeah,
article, but the editorial called it a land grab. Whether or not you agree with that is your decision to make. I think that there are pros and cons, as there are with all business transactions. The ugly is that, and Alex, you and I disagree on this, is I'm very much not in favor of just get a stadium no matter what. I think that it is much more important to build the infrastructure around the stadium, to have transportation from Broward, from Dade, or in Dade, and from Palm Beach County. I think that too much focus has been made specifically on the city and not enough of this South Florida community. I mean, they had, I was pretty disappointed with the situation to have all of the partnership restaurants and bars with the stadium. The furthest north one was in Hollywood, and that just goes to, and that was the only one I think that was in Broward County. All the rest were in Dade. So I think that only this, and this is sort of adjacent to the discussion on the stadium, but only focusing on Dade is long term not for the best. Short term, you might get that pop. Short term, you
mm,
might get that gain, but long term, I think that it's that the team shouldn't. And I know that I'm biased because I'm up here in Palm Beach, so I understand that bias. But not having anything north of where the current stadium is, um, uh, I guess reeks a little bit of what the Marlins did and not what the Heat do, right? Like the Heat did
mm,
their preseason camp at FAU in Boca. The Heat reach out to all three counties. The Marlins said, "No, we are Miami, Miami, Miami," and look at those fan bases. And so you can argue with me all you want on that, and you can argue success with that all you want. But I think that right there, you look at it and say, which one do I feel more confident with going forward with? Because the Panthers are selling out right now. But the Panthers are selling out right now because the Panthers are good. So you can make the argument that all that matters is team success. If you win, they will come. But the Panthers are all the way out in Sunrise, and everybody's going to their games right now. So the
mm.
Dolphins are in Gardens. So and people still go. The Canes are in Gardens. People still go, and they have a fan base of 8,000 people. So you can make these like linear decisions on how you want to go. For me, I wish that they built more around Drive Pink and sort of use that as like a commercial hub because I think their facilities are fantastic. That being said, Melrose is a fine opportunity. Politically, I don't know. Sorry, I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but I've been
Oh,
involved in this for a while. Um, that politically, I don't know if it's going to wind up being positive for the commissioners that are going to vote on it, which is why I'm a little tenuous on whether or not it'll pass. It can only afford one no vote, and they almost definitely have at least one no vote. So if
mm,
they lose anything more, it won't pass. That being said, it is possible that it will, and there are goods and bads. I know, like Billy would say it's all bad, and I know that the team would say it's all good. So there are sort of these weighing how you feel as a fan. You sort of have to make the decision: do I only care about getting a deal done, and like it doesn't matter how good or bad it is for the city? That's a decision for people who live in Miami. I'm not a Miami tax-paying resident. I think that if you were able to make a more city friendly deal in the same location and it didn't take too long, that would be best for all parties. But I haven't read the fine print, so I don't know specifically. People doing bookkeeping are better at this than me. I'm looking at it strictly from like a political, from a sports politics in South Florida writ large as a whole when I make this assessment. So if it passes, then I think it's good for the team. If it doesn't pass, it might be good for the Joe taxpayer in Miami. And you sort of have to like, who doesn't care about soccer? And you sort of have to like weigh and measure that balance.
I
Sorry, that
will
was really
say,
long.
yeah, no, it's good. I will say your point about them marketing to, North Florida, North, Miami, Broward folks. I think I'll agree. I think though, it must be in Miami, downtown Miami Stadium. I think that's a really MLS thing. It's always, the MLS dude bros who are clamoring for their stadiums to be in downtown areas, but realistically, not every city is set up the same. Miami is very, vertical. There's, not a lot of, like other cities, it's more of a, like take Nashville, for example. There's not a lot of, they can get stuff built, relatively quickly because, they're not as populated as, downtown Miami is. So, for I agree with your point that they should probably market a bit more. I know I live in Dade, so having a stadium 30 minutes from me would just make my life a bit easier. But Austin, I want to, do you have any thoughts on this? I know you're a Broward kid, but yeah, just on the stadium as a whole, and after that we'll wrap up.
I mean, obviously, I want the best for the club. I'm curious to see how this vote goes, just because it's been such a long time.
Yeah,
And I don't know if they can afford other setbacks, sure, but how many more do they want to try and afford? Is probably running out of patience and they just want something. And I hope that at the end of the day, they don't resort to something that they didn't initially want. I think that is something that I kind of fear. Um, but at the end of the day, like I said, I want what's in the best interest for the club. I don't know. I thought that I saw that Jorge Mas said it was going to be privately funded and it wouldn't take taxpayer dollars,
yeah.
which is obviously extremely important. I'm not sure how the fine print of that really works.
Mm.
But it's a tough one that I can't really weigh my stance in because, like Ian said, I'm not a Miami tax-paying resident. Those tax dollars, if they were to be used, aren't going towards that. I stay in Broward, and the Drive Pink Stadium location is great for me. So I'm kind of just gonna stay out and say I want what's best for the club.
Just real fast, I think it's also important to see who votes yes. There's like Alex de la Portilla, like in Little Havana, like how's that? Like where does that vote go? That's like a very interesting one for me. Joe Carroyo, where does that vote go? That's very interesting to me because based on that is going to be where do they think they can, like if we have made the decision that eventually one day there will be a stadium in Miami, then where those commissioners who represent these different areas, where do they stand on Melreese is going to be extremely important to, or Miami Freedom Park, whatever. Where they decide is going to be extremely important to me.
I have a little
And
bit of breaking news here,
yeah.
actually. Inter Miami just tweeted a new Inter Miami Club Pub Sub.
This looks really good.
At more than 240 South Florida Publix locations. So that is
Ooh.
All right,
that
I'm gonna
looks
go
really
get
good.
one.
Yeah, it does.
I know what I'm getting for lunch, right?
Yeah, that looks.
I don't
Yeah.
know what's on the sandwich. I don't know if it does it tell. Oh, it does tell
Turkey,
you. Okay.
tomato, lettuce, bacon, avocado, cilantro, lime. That actually sounds really
Mm.
good. I'm not gonna lie. I love subs like
All
that,
right.
so I'll go and check that out. And with
Talk
that
about a
said,
lighter note.
yeah, honestly, that's a perfect way to end the show. With that said, we are the Heron Outlet. That is Ian Hess. That is Austin Robillard. I am Alex Winley. For our producer Andres, you can follow us on our socials at the Heron Outlet on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. That is the Heron Outlet, and we will see you next week.